Greetings, my fellow intellectuals and bookworms. Today it's time for another long overdue book review. Yeah, I'm just doing some of the ones I promised a while ago, probably several months ago at this point. It's been busy, it's gone for a month on vacation, know how it is. So, some of the ones I said I might have delivered, I might not deliver, but it's only because I decided that the book wasn't worth doing a review. If you did not know this, I read more than 100 books a year, so I can't do reviews on all of them. Not only do I not have space on my phone, but I have. But some books are good, and in general, they get reviews. Some are better than mediocre, but not worth doing a review on, and that's probably half of them. So I guess also my phone's kind of starting to get low on space. It was at 3.5 gigs last time I checked. And no, I don't have that much stuff on my phone, which is why it's surprising. And I used some to update YouTube, hoping it would fix a problem I had. I couldn't see my older videos. It turns out that one of the updates just made a stupid programming thing. For example, if you want to see your older videos, you have to go to My Videos and click by View by Oldest, and there's no View All button, so that's kind of a problem. So here's the book we're reviewing, Second Arab Awakening. Basically, it's a book on Arab Spring. It's one of the only ones I've seen. Partially, it's because it's a new event, and it's partially that the explanation seems simple. People were sick of dictators who didn't do shit for their people, and who had large amounts of people who were, oppressed, poor, living on the streets, homeless, without a job. And as we all know, large amounts of people without jobs and futures is a recipe for regime change, which is partially why I'm surprised that the student loan bubble hasn't been fixed by now. I'm surprised that there hasn't been a student uprising yet. But anywho, that's kind of a story for another time. Maybe it's that our election system, the fact that we actually have elections, gives people a chance to change the system. But anywho, back to the summary. So basically, it's one of the only books I've seen, and it's basically because the reason for Arab Spring is seen as self-explanatory, and there's very little analysis other than what I like to call post-op analysis, in which people say, well, let's look at the impact of it. And it's like, well, well, Egypt had a democracy for a bit. They elected an insane nut job from the Arab Brotherhood, from the Muslim Brotherhood, which, let's be honest, we don't know much. I mean, even though I've done research on them because I'm an informed American, unlike some people, most people, when they hear Arab or Muslim Brotherhood, they immediately think terrorist group. After doing research, I've determined that they were opposed to the Egyptian monarchy in the past, and they're a mutual help society, kind of similar to an early America, but that they do advocate some policies like Muslim law, violent regime change. You get the point. So maybe not a terrorist group, but close enough. And of course, he was ousted because he narrowly won the popular vote. Maybe he didn't even win it at all with corruption, who knows, but he was just creating problems, so the general, forget his name, but he's the guy the U.S. supports and gives money and military aid, overthrew him and took over, and the leadership has been better. But, so that, Tunisia went finally to a democracy, one of the first instances. In Yemen, in Yemen, it got embroiled in civil war. In Sudan, the dictator won by brutally cracking down, even though there's still protests and problems, and he's only barely in power. In Libya, he got overthrown, obviously, and the situation is basically in flux. And in, Syria, it's basically a civil war creating mass refugees and problems like that. But anywho, and in Saudi Arabia, they intervened in Bahrain, a nearby country, to prevent problems there. But basically, to a certain extent, we in America like results. We want to know that something happened, and if it's a major historical event, if it ends up turning out bad, we might be disappointed, but we'll accept it. But if nothing happens as a result of a major event, then we're pissed. So we like to know the ending. Does that make sense? And that's a key part of understanding the American psyche if you're not American. And we're good at winning and we like winning. So, but, so post-op analysis is what we do all the time. And yes, this book suffers from that. But again, almost all books written by practically anyone would not would almost always analyze what happened as well and the results. Unless, for example, you wanted to make a 2-volume series on the Arab Spring, and then you put more filler content in it, and then put a read next the conclusion to Arab Spring or something, and even then it would be a gimmick, like stretching one book out into more than one just to make more money. But again, pretty much all books will suffer from that because human nature, we like to know the endings to things and we're addicted to knowing those endings. So it gets points for being the only one, and it was a great book. It also analyzes the social conditions which created the first Arab awakening. Basically, the idea is that they went from being colonies of Britain, France, or others to being independent, and they had a surge of nationalism, like in other countries in Africa and so on, and they had charismatic rulers who either legitimately wanted to help or were tyrants in disguise who convinced the people that they would help, and then they got disillusioned as a person proceeded to become more and more of a tyrant, and then eventually the things boiled over. And it's an important analysis. I'll finish up by just giving it a review, several important notes, and buying recommendation. They mention the French and British intervention in the Suez Canal as a key point of Nasser's regime. And to someone from Egypt, he saved the country from Western imperialism, or something to that tune, and to a good deal of Muslims, that's the opinion. Now just put aside every preconceived notion you have, whether you're a Muslim or Western or whatever. Just chuck it aside. Britain and France unilaterally intervened in the Suez. The U.S. told Britain and France when they said, U.S., we're going to intervene in the Suez Canal. Would you help us? We said, you better not fucking do that. We will not help you in that case. And a matter of fact, we will sanction you. Yes, I get that you're our allies, but we don't want you to do that so much that we will sanction you until you stop. And they proceeded to ignore us. We even wrote a resolution condemning our allies, which in the U.S., if you look at history, is pretty rare. Israel is terrible at treating its own citizens well. Again, Palestinians under international law should be citizens. But for every one Israeli killed in a rocket attack, more than 200 Palestinians are killed. If we include injured to that, it only increases Israeli numbers by like 20, plus the 10 deaths, while it increases Palestinian numbers from already thousands to several hundreds. So it's from thousands to tens of thousands. So it's not even a fair fight, and Israel is basically committing human rights violations daily. But the U.S. doesn't condemn them because they're our friend, and we think that, well, they occupy a strategic position and we want a democracy and a friend in this region, so we're willing to back them against whatever they do. And people in the Middle East condemn us for supporting Israel, but whenever I talk to someone on YouTube, a Middle Easterner, I say, I'm an American and I support the Palestinians because the Israelis are clearly abusing human rights. And they'll say, you don't see that often with Americans. And I'll mention that, well, I looked at the history of the conflict, read up on it, and had no preconceived notions and came to that conclusion. That's kind of a different story. But basically, Israel also intervened as well, but that's kind of a story for another time. Cough, cough, 6 Days War. Anywho, and it was a complete fiasco for the British in Egypt. They got their ass handed to them by the Egyptians. They got blockaded by the U.S., who blockaded all their supplies so that they couldn't resupply their soldiers because we said, we fucking warned you not to do it. Now you disobey us and you expect us to allow your ships to pass through and resupply. And the Egyptians beat their ass. As I said, they only really stopped doing what they were doing because the U.S. was so pissed at them and they needed the U.S. that much that they decided it just wasn't worth it. So they pulled out, and it was a credit to Nasser because stood against Western imperialism. He defeated the Americans. Oh, and their imperial slapdogs. You know, standard rhetoric in third world countries in Africa and Asia and the Middle East. But if you look at the statements, the U.S. basically supported Egypt's sovereignty and said, we don't want you to do this. So essentially it was the U.S. that did that. But we also ended the world of colonialism and imperialism. So really all of Africa and most of Asia should be thanking us for saving millions of lives that way. That's kind of a story for another time. So it covers that pretty well. What else? Well, it it completely avoids Israel and Palestine, and it pretty much tries to avoid any event in which, it only barely talks about areas in which revolutions were averted, and in that case, it's to contrast it with areas in which revolutions successfully happened. And it's a good book. So my final result is I would recommend it. I got it at the library book sale for $1, so that's even better. So I guess buy it wherever you can. Your local bookstore, again, I think you should support your local bookstore because we need those. Amazon if you have to, because let's be honest, sometimes you can't find what you're looking for. Barnes & Noble, your library book sale, get it wherever, it's well worth acquiring. So, as a final thought before I go and then give you another upload, because I'm being generous since I've been gone for a while, I just want to thank all my new subscribers. I just checked one day, I had 21 subscribers, and then it's 25, and then it's, I got like 3 of them at once. Now I'm at 31. I'm not growing quite as quickly as I hoped, but you gotta put effort into it. And again, I'm just one guy with a camera and an iPhone. So I think it's amazing. And if you are not subscribed, I want you to like, comment, and subscribe if you've not done so. This is Sean Hartnett wishing you a good day.